Page 188. On June 19, 2017, Supervisory Special Agent 2, who had returned from leave, exchanged a series of link messages with Client-Smith regarding Page. The following are text messages going back and forth, or link messages, and a lot of it are pseudonyms because they're not releasing the names of these people, so it's pretty hard to follow as I read it. It's better to see it. Supervisory Special Agent 2. Do we have any update on the OGA CHS, that is Page, request? Also, Case Agent 1. Said OI Attorney 1 is not so optimistic. Client-Smith, OGA, CHS, you are referring to Page? Supervisory Special Agent 2, yes. Client-Smith, he is clear. Supervisory Special Agent 2, cleared to fly? Client-Smith, diagraph equals mast USPER. Supervisory Special Agent 2, so he was, and the relationship officially ended? Client-Smith, so essentially, the real source was using Page as a still-like subsource? Client-Smith, Carter Page was never a source. Supervisory Special Agent 2, you mean the OGA officer? Client-Smith, right, whoever generated the reporting from the documents. Client-Smith again, it was just liaison with Page, which resulted in reporting. Eventually, they closed it out as unhelpful. Client-Smith again, so in discussing the OI Attorney 1, he agreed we do not need to address it in the FISA. Client-Smith again, OI Attorney 1 is always in drafting these special FISA applications. Supervisory Special Agent 2, so Page was a digraph or Page was a subsource of the digraph. Page 190. Client-Smith, it sounds like a subsource of the digraph. Client-Smith, and yes, the OGA confirmed explicitly he was never a source. Supervisory Special Agent 2, interesting. Client-Smith, but like, interesting good, right? Client-Smith, I mean, at least we don't have to have a terrible footnote. Supervisory Special Agent 2, sure, just interesting. They say not a source. We thought otherwise based on the writing. I will reread. Client-Smith, at most, it's another person being the CHS and you talking to the other person. Supervisory Special Agent 2, got it, thank you. Do we have that in writing? Client-Smith, on TS, I will forward. As reflected above, Client-Smith told Supervisory Special Agent 2 that Page was never a source, that the OGA confirmed explicitly he was never a source. When Supervisory Special Agent 2 asked if Client-Smith had that in writing, Client-Smith responded he did and that he would forward the email to the OGA that the OGA had provided. Immediately after the link messages between Client-Smith and Supervisory Special Agent 2, Client-Smith forwarded to Supervisory Special Agent 2 a version of OGA Liaison 1's June 15, 2017 email containing alterations that Client-Smith had made. The altered email from the liaison read as follows. My recollection is that Page was or is digraph and not a source, but the documents will explain the details. If you need a formal definition for the FISA, please let me know and we'll work up some language and get it cleared for use. Page 191. Client-Smith had altered the original June 15, 2017 email from the liaison by adding the words, quote, and not a source, end quote, to the email, thus making it appear that OGA Liaison 1 had written in the email that Page was not a source for the OGA. Relying on the altered email, Supervisory Special Agent 2 signed the application that was submitted to the FISC on June 29, 2017. This final FISA application did not include Page's history or status with the OGA. The office's investigators, like the OIG investigators, confirmed with OGA Liaison 1 that she had no recollection of ever having told Client-Smith that Page was not a source for the OGA. CHS meetings with Papadopoulos, Page, and a third Trump campaign member, the Yahoo News article about Page, and Page's offer to be interviewed. In addition to opening Crossfire Hurricane, the FBI opened or had opened investigations of 4 individuals associated with the Trump campaign. The FBI CHSs, or undercover employees, which are UCEs, met with two of those individuals, Papadopoulos and Page, as well as with a senior Trump campaign foreign policy official, and recorded many of these meetings. Many of the omissions and much of the misleading information found on the Page FISA applications described by the OIG deserved additional emphasis in this report based on the office's review of the transcripts and careful review of the actual recorded conversations themselves. Indeed, listening to the recordings and reviewing the transcripts was especially important when considered against the backdrop of an unauthorized disclosure made to Yahoo News about the federal investigation into Page and Page's subsequent offer to be interviewed by the FBI. The FBI's engagement with CHS-1 and first consensual recording of Carter Page on August 20, 2016. Approximately 10 days after the Crossfire Hurricane investigation was opened on Page, Case Agent 1 worked to arrange a meeting with CHS-1, a long-term counterintelligence source who the FBI had paid a substantial amount of money over many years. Washington Field Office closed CHS-1 for cause on January 2011 for, quote, displaying aggressiveness toward handling agents as a result of what she perceived as not enough compensation and for exhibiting questionable allegiance to the intelligence targets with which CHS-1 maintained contact, end quote. Nevertheless, Case Agent 1 reopened CHS-1 within 2 months of the CHS's closing and continued to serve her handling agent through the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Case Agent 1 had served as CHS-1's handling agent for most of the 5-year period before the opening of Crossfire Hurricane. When the FBI approached CH-1 in August 2016 to determine whether he or she knew Papadopoulos, CHS-1 said that she was not familiar with Papadopoulos. However, CHS-1 asked Case Agent 1 and 2 other FBI employees who were present if the FBI had any interest in Carter Page, with whom CHS-1 had met a month earlier in July 2016. The FBI learned that Page had been invited to attend the July 2016 meeting focused on intelligence and global security affairs. Page's attendance at the overseas event occurred just days after his visit to Russia, where he had delivered a commencement address at the new economics school in Moscow. Given the circumstances and familiarity that CHS-1 had with Page from their recent meeting together at the overseas seminar, the FBI believed CHS-1 could initiate contact with Page without arousing any suspicion. CHS-1 contacted Page at the behest of the FBI, and a meeting was arranged for August 20, 2016, which CHS-1 recorded. The primary purpose of the meeting and the 3 additional consensually recorded meetings with Page made by CHS-1 was to assist in determining whether Page had information relevant to the allegation that predicated the opening of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Footnote 1174. One individual interviewed by the office advised that CHS-1 was directly involved in deciding which individuals would be invited to the earlier meetings and had authorized an invitation being sent to Page. Footnote 1175. It does not appear that, at that time, CHS-1 disclosed to the Crossfire Hurricane investigators that on May 3, 2016, CHS-1 sent an email to Trump Policy Director 1 that contained his/her resume, spoke to his/her prior political experience regarding foreign policy matters, offered to help Trump in the foreign policy area, and although stating that he/she was not seeking a position in the Trump administration, said he/she believed it was important to see Trump elected. When the office asked about the email, CHS-1 said that Page had asked him/her to send it. However, when reminded that he/she had not even met Page until nearly 2 months later, CHS-1 said he/she probably sent it because he/she thought he/she could be helpful to the campaign regarding a particular country, which was not Russia. Relatedly, short after Trump's election, on November 2016, CHS-1, while still an FBI CHS, sent a senior Trump transition team member an email offering his/her congratulations on Trump's victory and expressing an interest in assisting the new administration. Page 193. The first meeting between Page and CHS-1 took place as scheduled on August 20, 2016. Before the meeting, the FBI briefed CHS-1 on the information received from Foreign Government 1 that predicated the opening of Crossfire Hurricane. Because Page and CHS-1 were acquainted from their July meeting, they discussed a number of topics during the August 20th engagement. CHS-1 said that he had once known Manafort, the Trump campaign manager who had resigned the previous day. Page told CHS-1 that he, Page, had actually literally never met Manafort, never said one word to him. When Page added that he had sent Manafort a couple of emails, the CHS interrupted him and said, quote, "And he, Manafort, never responded probably?" Page then replied, never responded one word, end quote. Since that time, Page has repeatedly stated that, despite allegations to the contrary, he never met or corresponded with Manafort while they worked on the campaign. Later in the conversation, Page told CHS-1 that, quote, "I was never from the beginning a Manafort fan," end quote. Page also said that he believed Manafort might be in some trouble, but he provided no further information regarding the source of the trouble. Page's statements about Manafort, especially about their having no relationship, seriously undercut the reports from Steele subsequently received by the Crossfire Hurricane investigators that alleged that Page was engaged in a conspiracy with Manafort, the Trump campaign, and the Russians. Importantly, FBI records reflect that the Crossfire Hurricane investigators apparently failed to determine at the time whether Page's statements to the CHS-1 had a basis in fact. Had they done so, investigators would have found that Page had previously sent Manafort one direct email message and copied him on two other messages, none of which Manafort appears to have answered. Page 194. This documentary evidence provides significant corroboration of Page's statements about Manafort and should have raised, at the time when the FBI was assessing the Steele reporting, serious concerns about the reliability of an important piece of that reporting. In addition to discussing Manafort, Page and CHS-1 also discussed three other topics. First, at several points in the conversation, Page was asked about a possible, quote, October surprise being planned by the Trump campaign. In one place, CHS-1 referenced an October surprise from an earlier presidential election, and Page responded that he wanted to know the definition of an October surprise because there's a different October surprise in this year, but although maybe some similarities. Toward the end of their meeting, Page was bluntly asked, quote, "What is the October surprise you are planning?" end quote. The recording reflects that this was followed by someone laughing. Page responded, quote, "Well, I want to have the conspiracy theory about the next email dump with these 33,000, end quote. In reply, CHS-1 asked, quote, "Well, the Russians have all that, don't they?" end quote. And Page stated, I don't know, end quote. Second, Page discussed with and confirmed for CHS-1 certain recent media reports regarding Page's business relationship in Russia. Nevertheless, during this meeting and all other subsequent recorded meetings with CHS-1, Page either implicitly or explicitly denied that those relationships were with the Russian government. Additionally, during all of his meetings with CHS-1, Page never provided any information, evidence, or documentation indicating knowledge of any relationship between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. Rather, in this meeting and on several occasions during other subsequent meetings, Page told CHS-1 that Trump wanted improved relations between the United States and Russia and Russian President Putin. At no time did Page discuss anything about the campaign working in concert with the Russian government. Third, CHS-1 initiated a discussion with Page about Papadopoulos, asserting that, quote, "Someone in redacted said there's a guy in London, Papadopoulos, who's talking about the Trump campaign relations with the Russians," end quote. Alluding to the information passed to the FBI by Australia that FBI officials stated formed the basis for the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Page, however, did not confirm or even address CHS-1's insinuation of a relationship between the Trump campaign and Russia, page 195. Rather, Page was somewhat dismissive of Papadopoulos' youth and described him as having gotten in some hot water over comments Papadopoulos, made about British Prime Minister David Cameron owing Trump an apology. Again, Page did not display any knowledge of an illicit relationship between Trump campaign and Russia. Finally, when CHS-1 again tried to elicit information on this subject by stating, quote, "So this fellow Papadopoulos is just a young guy who's saying things that he shouldn't say or what? End quote. Page responded by simply stating, quote, no, he's a fine guy, end quote. Again, Page did not state or display any knowledge of an existing relationship between the campaign and Russia, despite CHS-1's baited statements designed to elicit such information from Page. Page's recorded statements were significant because this was the first time Crossfire Hurricane investigators had an opportunity to obtain direct evidence that might corroborate or alternatively raise questions about the allegations passed on by Australia. In his first recorded conversation, Page did not corroborate this information. 5 days later, a briefing concerning this first recording of Page was held at FBI headquarters for Deputy Director McCabe, Assistant Director Priestap, General Counsel Baker, Section Chief Strobe, Deputy General Counsel Anderson, and other FBI personnel. In addition to a discussion of the meeting between CHS-1 and Page, excerpts from the recorded meeting were played at the briefing. The receipt of the first Steele reports, publications from the Yahoo News article naming Page and Page's expressed willingness to be interviewed by the FBI. There were no additional meetings between Page and CHS-1 until almost 2 months later. In the interim, on September 19, 2016, FBI personnel conducting the Crossfire Hurricane investigation received documents that were represented to be intelligence-type products authored by former British intelligence official Christopher Steele. These documents were part of what has become known collectively as the Steele dossier. While other sections of this report discuss in detail Steele and his reporting, 2 allegations relating to Page are relevant to this section. In particular, one allegation stated that, quote, there was a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation between them, the Trump campaign, and the Russian leadership that was managed on the Trump side by Paul Manafort, who was using foreign policy advisor Carter Page and others as intermediaries, end quote. In that role, Page purportedly served as the liaison or go-between for Trump campaign chairman Manafort and Russian officials working with the Trump campaign. This allegation was a stark contrast to and in direct conflict with what CHS-1 had recorded Page saying in August. Someone explicitly, in subsequent meetings between CHS-1 and Page, CHS-1 never attempted to re-engage Page on the subject of his relationship with Manafort, page 196. Moreover, prior to submitting the initial FISA application to the FISC on October 2016, Crossfire Hurricane investigators apparently never sought to obtain Page's email or phone records, whether from Page himself or otherwise, to verify or disprove Page's statements about his lack of relationship with Manafort. As a result, at no other time, either before or during the electronic surveillance of Page, did the FBI resolve the glaring conflict between Page's unequivocal statement regarding Manafort and the critical assertion in the Steele reports that Page served as one of Manafort's liaisons to the Russians. The second Page-related allegation in the Steele reporting was a claim that in July 2016, while in Moscow to deliver a speech to the new economic school, Page had met secretly with Vladimir Putin's ally and chief executive officer of Rosneft, Igor Sechin, and also with Kremlin Internal Affairs official Igor Devyakin. In late September, the allegations concerning Page's meeting with Sechin and Devyakin first made their way into the public domain with the publication of an article in Yahoo News authored by Michael Isikoff. In the article, Mr. Isikoff wrote that Page, an American businessman who had been identified as a foreign policy advisor to then-president candidate Trump, was the subject of an investigation being conducted by U.S. intelligence officials. The officials reportedly were trying to determine if Page was having private communications with senior Russian officials. The article went on to refer to a congressional source and said that Page's talks with senior Russian officials close to President Vladimir Putin were being, quote, actively monitored and investigated, end quote, and that a senior U.S. law enforcement official did not dispute that characterization, stating, quote, it's on our radar screen, it's being looked at, end quote. The article credited a well-placed Western intelligence source as identifying Sechin and Devyakin, both of whom were alleged to be close to Putin, as individuals with whom Page had met while in Moscow. 2 days after publication of the Yahoo News article, Page sent a letter to FBI Director Comey. In that letter, Page requested the FBI promptly end its inquiry into his recent trip to Russia. Page 197. Page alluded to the fact that he had previously been interviewed by the FBI and specifically volunteered to speak to any member of the FBI in the interest of helping them put these outrageous allegations about him to rest, was a quote. Page denied what he termed, quote, completely false media reports, stating, for the record, I have not met this year with any sanctioned official in Russia, end quote. Page also publicly stated that he had, quote, interacted with members of the U.S. intelligence community, including the FBI and CIA, for many decades, end quote. The FBI, however, did not take Page up on his offer to be interviewed, and indeed, the Crossfire Hurricane investigators were prohibited by FBI senior executives from approaching Page until former Director Comey finally authorized the interview in March 2017, almost 6 months after Page's written offer. In this regard, FBI records reflect the following relevant link messages. On October 13, 2016, 1 week before the initial Page FISA application was submitted to the FISC, 2 Crossfire Hurricane investigators, Case Agent 1, a principal source of information for the Page FISA application, and Special Agent 2, had the following exchange. Case Agent 1: it looks like management doesn't want us to do an interview right now. Special Agent 2: of course not. That would make too much sense. Case Agent 1: yeah, exactly. We were told by Supervisory Special Agent 1 that management wants to see what we get from his meeting with CHS Monday and what we need in the FISA. Shortly thereafter, the following exchange occurred between Special Agent 2 and Supervisory Special Agent 1. Special Agent 2: yeah, Case Agent 1 says no appetite to interview Page either. That's stupid. Supervisory Special Agent 1: yeah, dude, I don't know why we are even here. Page 198. It is clear from the link messages exchanges that there was frustration on the part of Crossfire Hurricane investigators over their inability to conduct a timely interview of Page. Page 199. It is also clear from the messages sent by Case Agent 1, Special Agent 2, and their supervisor on the investigation, Supervisory Special Agent 1, that the timing and circumstances of the interview were not left to the individuals conducting and supervising the investigation, but rather the decisions on those issues were effectively being made by the Director and Deputy Director of the FBI. In this regard, according to McCabe, quote, Director Comey was getting daily briefings on the stuff regularly, end quote, and the Director was intimately involved with the team that was working on the case. We observed that Page's letter to Director Comey was received by the FBI less than 1 week following the Crossfire Hurricane investigative team's receipt of some of the startling but uncorroborated still reports. As noted above, those reports included, among a number of other allegations, specific claims that Page was serving as an intermediary between Manafort and Russian leadership, and that Page had met with both Sechin and Devyekin while traveling to Russia in July 2016. As to the former, as detailed above, Page had already been recorded on August 20, 2016, informing CHS-1 that he had no relationship with Manafort, and indeed had never spoken with him. As to the latter claim, Page would be recorded on October 17, 2016, informing CHS-1 that he had not met with Sechin, as reported by Steele, and was completely unfamiliar with Devyekin. During this same time frame, and as set forth in greater detail below, the Crossfire Hurricane investigative team was working with OI to secure authorization from the FISC for a FISA warrant on Page. An interview of Page at the time, for which he had volunteered, would have undoubtedly been beneficial to the nascent Crossfire Hurricane investigation. As noted, Page had previously been interviewed by the FBI on multiple occasions related to his work on the Trump campaign. There was no indication of any reticence on his part to speak openly and at length with the FBI. Indeed, an interview with Page would have enabled the FBI to explore whatever topics were deemed relevant to the investigation, including but not limited to the following. Page's assessment of Papadopoulos, whose statement to the Australian diplomats had served as the predication for the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. At the time Page volunteered to be interviewed, he had already discussed Papadopoulos with CHS-1. Page's relationship, if any, with Manafort, Sechin, Devyekin, and other persons of interest to the investigators. An evaluation of any in-person denials made by Page of the allegations contained in the Issakoff Yahoo News article, which would have served the dual purpose of enabling the FBI to better assess the credibility of the Steele dossier reporting by obtaining more detailed information about the allegations directly from Page. Explore with Page any contacts that he knew or suspected between individuals working on the campaign and any Russian officials Because he was familiar with Russia, the FBI might have been better able to assess the credibility of the media reporting on Trump's alleged relationship with Russian officials. Page 200. An interview with Page also would have enabled the FBI to better assess the reliability of CHS-1. Finally, if the Crossfire Hurricane investigators believed that Page was not being candid, they could have asked Page to submit to a voluntary polygraph exam and to produce relevant records. Although there may have been a concern that interviewing Page would adversely affect the FBI's ability to secure a FISA warrant, Page had already denied the allegations in the C.F.R. article and the SIR reports, which he was not even aware at the time. In his letter to Director Comey, Page again denied the allegations in a September 26, 2016 Washington Post article, calling them, quote, garbage. As previously noted and discussed in more detail below, in a recorded conversation with CHS-1 on October 17, 2016, 4 days before the FISA surveillance application was approved, Page explicitly denied meeting with Sechin and Devyekin. All of Page's denials were characterized by the FBI in the initial FISA application, as discussed below, as not credible. If Page had further denied the allegations in an interview, those denials, too, could have been included in the application. Moreover, again, they also may have succeeded in getting Page to agree to take a voluntary polygraph examination on unresolved issues and areas of concern. Nevertheless, senior FBI management made the decision not to interview Page and instead continue to move forward with the FISA surveillance targeting Page. Notably, once Comey authorized the interview of Page to go forward in March 2017, Page sat for 5 voluntary interviews and fully cooperated with the FBI, even going so far as to bring his own PowerPoint presentation to one of the interviews. In those interviews, consistent with representations that he made to CHS-1 in recorded conversations, Page denied meetings with Sechin and Devyekin. Additionally, he also consistent with what he said to CHS-1, Page denied ever meeting with or speaking to Manafort. Although the office recognizes the benefit of hindsight in reviewing investigative decision-making, failure to promptly conduct a voluntary interview of Page, contemporaneous with his request for such an interview, was a missed opportunity to further assess on a timely basis and in a different light the actual value of the Papadopoulos information provided by Australia. It also was a missed opportunity to test the reliability of claims about Page contained in the SIR reports. Other investigative deficiencies with respect to Page and the office's assessment are discussed further below.